Today, we're looking at a brown ink by Akkerman, Dutch Masters number 4. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps in the description down below, so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram. And if you're new here, I do fountain pen ink reviews every single day, so I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then inked up this Pilot Metropolitan with a 1.0 stub. I wrote with it for a day and then used it to take the notes for this video. In order to have some standardization, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in the first writing samples, although there is an additional writing sample with different papers later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to make sure I keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some very nice shading. It starts as a lighter tone, gets darker into the Ks, darker and lighter and darker and lighter. Beautiful in there. It's really, it comes out very light and goes to a nice mid-tone. Very nice here. The extra fine is slightly lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and a lot of gorgeous shading. Starts darker, gets lighter, gets darker, all in quick. Brown starts darker, gets lighter. The N gets just a little bit darker again. Fox, darker to lighter to darker. 7 seconds to dry here. The medium is the same tone as the extra fine. It has no feather spread, halo sheen. The shading is amazing. Quick, dark to light to dark to mid-tone to dark. Brown, dark to light. Fox, light to dark. Jumps, light to dark. Beautiful stuff. 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows plenty of color variation, and we're getting it in the writing sample without a doubt. Tomoe River. No bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread. It has halo all over it, except in the lighter areas, and it does have shade. Now the halo and the shading tend to come together. Where it's darker in the Ks, there's more halo. Where it's lighter on the end of the N, less halo. But it's amazing. It looks really standout gorgeous. The extra fine is lighter than the stub. The extra fine has no feather spread, no halo, no sheen, some shading. The X in Fox is a little bit darker than the rest of the word. In Jumps, it gets darker at the PS. The K in Quick is a little bit darker, so there's spots of shading, just not as standout as a bunch of the other samples. 9 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, same tone as the stub, with no feather spread. It has halo all over. No sheen and a lot of shading. Now the shading and the halo come together just like it did with the stub. So the Q in Quick has some darker areas and some halo, and when it gets lighter into the U, no halo. Gets darker into the I, halo. Beautiful. This is really very nice. 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows no real color variation. We didn't get any. The scrubby of the medium shows some left to right, and we get it, but it's really brought out in the writing sample because of that halo effect. Rhodia paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread. It does offer halo. I don't see halo an awful lot on Rhodia, every now and then, but we do have it here, like on the Ks. Both have some halo on them. The number symbol, I forget what it's, an octo something. For the number 4, halo on it. So it does have some halo, no sheen, and the halo again comes with the shading. So it's darker at the Ks, halo. Gets lighter into the ermine, no halo. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 7 seconds. Now I say no shade, there are a couple of spots that are a little bit darker, and I think it's just a matter of having the right pen to really help. You get your flow right and the nib right with an ink, and it's just really gorgeous. The X is a little bit darker in Fox. Okay? The K is a little bit darker in Quick. Not a ton. There are some spots I can pull out that are a little bit darker, which means I know I could get that full shading here. 7 seconds to dry. Medium is much darker than the extra fine, same tone as the stub with no feather spread. It has halo that comes with the shading and no sheen. Everywhere it gets darker, it gets some halo. So the top of the F in Fox, lighter, no halo. The rest of Fox, halo. Beautiful stuff. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows way more color variation than we actually got. The medium doesn't show a lot, but it does come, and it does come with halo here. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this orangey brownish tone. It's a brown leaning kind of towards orange, which brown can have a lot of different base colors making it. Now it pushes its way up, and it does get darker as it moves up, but at the very top of it we get this a very nice blue, which I find that when I get that color just across the top like that, it often has pretty good shading. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water, and I see no difference between these chromatographies. They're exactly the same. So I don't expect any kind of resistance on this ink. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I go straight to the lowercase h, which is completely blown out and going away and makes me weary to use this in a note-taking situation. Now, that's not unexpected when you look at what happens with the water, which is reactivating, completely lifting it off. Given more than 30 seconds, I know that that is all that it's going to take to get this ink out of your pen. That matches with what went on in the chromatography. Pen flush didn't do anything more than water did, which means the extra chemicals don't do anything, and given more than 30 seconds, you don't need anything more. Now, the 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the paper, but it doesn't matter in this conversation because you wouldn't use it to get that out of your pen. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Now I'm going to link a video where I show how I test it and how I calculate the data. Akkerman Dutch Masters number 4 has a viscosity of 1.73, which is a really wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Akkerman Dutch Masters number 4 has an average dry time of 10 seconds, which is a faster drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like Akkerman Dutch Masters number 4, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted a nice dusty red and chose Birmingham Pen Company's George Westinghouse Alternator Crimson. The second writing sample is done on TWSBI, Monocoque, and Leuchtturm 1917 paper. Here we see it on TWSBI notebook paper. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread. It does have halo all over it. The entire thing has been completely outlined. Very nice. No sheen. Some shading. There's darker and there are lighter areas. Some of that's going to get a little eaten up by the tone of this paper. But it's darker on the left and gets lighter as we move through the word Akkerman. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than we get with the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does offer some very nice shading, like Quick starts darker, gets lighter, gets darker again. Brown starts darker, gets lighter. Fox starts as a darker tone, gets lighter, gets darker again, jumps, starts light and gets dark. Beautiful. And 6 seconds to dry. Medium, same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, and a very nice shading. Quick starts darker, gets lighter, gets darker again. Brown starts dark and gets light. Same story here. 9 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine is not showing very much color variation, and we did get more up there. The medium shows a lot of color variation, and we did get a lot of color variation. How about monokaki? I'm sure I'm butchering that, but I just like saying it that way. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade really in the writing. Only a couple darker letters, like the X in Fox or the P in Jumps. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, not quite as dark as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and there are some better shading spots. Brown starts darker, shades to light, shades to dark again. Nice. Fox starts light and gets dark. Nice. Better shading with the medium, 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us plenty of color variation, far left to far right. Not really, too much in the extra fine, but it does show up in the medium. And Leuchtturm 1917 dot pads, or dot journals, or bullet journals, or whatever you like to call it. No bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is noticeably darker. Did it 3 times and I still said it wrong because I had to film this same part twice. Noticeably lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no real shading. 5 seconds to dry. The medium is a little bit darker than the extra fine, with no feather spread, halo sheen, and nice shading through the writing. Now I don't know if the pen just started writing wetter, which is what really looks like is happening here. It looks like it just all of a sudden righted itself to becoming a wet pen again. This used to be my wettest pen, and then it got dry for a couple days, and then it looks like it's come back. In the drier form, we see quite a bit of shading that was going on, which is one of the reasons I do enjoy dry pens. But in the wetter form, not a whole lot of shading. Beautiful tone. 8 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for the extra fine and the medium don't show a lot of color variation. We didn't get it, because on the medium we have to kind of look at it as there was the dry and then wet. Fixed itself. 8 seconds to dry there. Yep, no color variation. That is all that I have for the writing sample. So what do I think of Akkerman's Dutch Masters No. 4? I think this is a very nice light brown ink that shades very well. It gives a very old world feeling to a lot of what you write. It's a nice way to subtly draw attention to your own writing. So what nib and pen would give the best writing experience with this ink? Now, a very wet pen will put down a darker tone, but you'll lose some of the shading. I found a medium flow, medium nib pen to give the most enjoyable experience for me. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you, if you enjoyed it, subscribe. Thanks for watching.